Hey folks, back with another video. Let's dive into what stories got my attention today. Starting with Thailand, the Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha backed down on Wednesday over emergency measures he had imposed last week to stop the 3 months of protest in it. Now the protesters said that his offer to lift the restrictions were not enough. The Thai Prime Minister urged the protesters to take a step back before they enter the slippery slope of chaos. Now, as Prime Minister Prayut spoke, tens of thousands of protesters were marching towards his office at the government house to demand his resignation as well as the lifting of the emergency measures and release of dozens of activists arrested in a crackdown. About 2 kilometers from the government house, a wall of riot police initially blocked marching protesters but eventually allowed them through. Now, most demonstrations have been peaceful so far, but the police using water cannon against the protesters last week further fueled the anger of the government critics. One Thai protester, Tatep Ruangprapek Kitsiri, said that Prayut must resign despite the lifting of emergency measures. Tatep told Reuters that other demands of protesters could be discussed in parliament. Now, it seems to me that the protesters are adamant on the Prime Minister's resignation and that nothing short of that will do. Moving on, the Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al Kazmi has listed some of the major problems that Iraq is facing, which has resulted in an economic meltdown in Iraq. Now, he said that the previous Iraqi government have ruled in order to maintain power rather than to build the country. The previous governments they ran their government uh, on oil revenue, which is of course dependent on oil profits. And as in recent times the oil prices have fallen, this has resulted in the Iraqi government not having enough money to pay its dues. On top of it, on top of that is the fact that there is rampant corruption in the government, which is hard to root out, and this also eats at the credibility of the state's functionality. While these are the domestic side of the problem that Iraq faces, Iraq also has international problems as well, such as its neighboring countries and broadly the US. Whenever there's a conflict in these countries, they wind up being played out in Iraq. For example, whenever there's the US and Iran are at conflict with each other, it has repercussions in Iraq. Along with whenever there is a Saudi Iranian or any Shia Sunni conflict, it again plays out in Iraq. Now, in my opinion, what I think Iraq really needs are economic reforms. And economic reforms along the lines of the free market, strong property rights, and with the state's major focus on security. Moving on, Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga wrapped up his first 4-day visit to the two Southeast Asian countries of Vietnam and Indonesia. Now, this was his first overseas trip as Prime Minister. Now, Prime Minister Suga said that Japan opposes any actions that will escalate tensions in the East and South China Seas and was not aiming at an quote Asian NATO to contain any specific country. Of course, China reacted, denouncing the grouping of the four democracies as a mini NATO, which is aimed at containing its development. Well, however, back to Suga's meeting with the Indonesian counterpart Joko Widodo on Tuesday, they agreed on speeding up talks on the export of Japanese defense gear and technology to Indonesia and have their defense and foreign ministers meet soon. Now, I think that Prime Minister Suga has done well, and hopefully he will continue to strengthen ties with its neighbors and build deeper and stronger relations on multiple levels. Moving on, some more welcome news in the US Russia front. It seems that Russia is ready to offer US mutual 1 year freeze on both sides' nuclear arsenal to extend the New START, a new start for the same period. Now, the freeze on warheads is a key US demand to extend the treaty, which will expire in the February 2021. Now, if an agreement is not reached, then it could be disastrous. However, the US State Department spokeswoman Morgan Ortagus welcomed the statement and said that the US is ready to finalize a deal with Moscow. Now, a senior Trump administration official told the Wall Street Journal that the US and Russia are close to making a deal. Now, the new START limits the number of warheads each side can have deployed at 1,550, but the mutual freeze cap the mutual freeze would cap all warheads in each country's arsenal, including those in storage, making verification quite difficult. However, all those technicalities aside, I just hope that the two sides can reach to an agreement that will be beneficial to both sides and, as a consequence, will reduce the risk of any kind of nuclear proliferation. Moving on, it seems that the Israeli officials believe uh, that they can have a better relationship with Qatar, according to a report by the Channel 13 News. Now, the report has not been independently verified, so I would take this news with a grain of salt. But of course, as we all know, that Israel is making deals with Arab countries, so there might be some truth in here. Now, the report said that Israel believed that Qatar views its positive contacts with Jerusalem as a way of getting back in the good graces of the Gulf Cooperation Council. Now, the channel also said that officials even floated the notion of Qatar moving to normalize ties with Israel in the not too distant future. While Channel 12 reported last week that Israel and Hamas had reached a truce agreement mediated by Qatar that will see some peace on the southern border for a period of 6 months. Now, in return, Qatar will transfer $100 million to Hamas in a deal coordinated with Doha by Mossad head Yossi Cohen, alongside the coordinator of government activities in the territories, according to this report. Well, everything aside, I hope that the Arab countries and Israel can make deals and also work to better the conditions of both the Israeli people and the Palestinian people and hopefully the region can finally see peace. Well, that's it for this video. If you liked the video, then hit that like button and hit that subscribe button for future updates. Write in the comment sections your thoughts, criticisms, and anything I might have missed. And I will see you in the next video.